Powerhouse singer Etta James is on her deathbed, too weak to express her dying wishes.
It was almost amazing that she lasted as long as she did, given the fact that she had so many drug problems.
Instead of rallying together, her family is bitterly divided over how to help.
No, I did not assert any undue influence on my mother. People should know my mother. You can't make her do nothing.
Well, it looks like what Artis was possibly trying to do was take the money out of all my mother's accounts and put it into his name, as far as we know.
There was definitely a difficult relationship between Artis and the sons.
At the heart of the battle, who should control Etta's fortune and how she'll spend her last days?
My mother was a fighter, and she wanted to keep fighting to the end, and that's the reason why she didn't want the plug pulled.
(2012). After a roller coaster life of musical highs and drug-addicted lows, singer Etta James is dying, 50 years after her signature song At Last becomes a hit. In her 73 years, she's won 6 Grammys. She's been inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Blues Hall of Fame, and the Grammy Hall of Fame. Bobby Murray is her longtime guitarist.
She always gave her all and sang every song as if it was their last song to sing. And that caught on with the rest of the band. Jazz, blues, rock and roll, the golden era of soul. She loved country too. And it didn't matter, as long as she could put the depth and emotion into a song, the genre didn't matter at all.
But the powerhouse singer has become too weak to express her dying wishes. Etta's bedridden, and dementia has left her confused and disoriented. Christine Pelisek is a reporter for the Daily Beast.
She was under 24-hour care, and she had no control at all. And at the end of the day, it was very sad for this woman who, was this icon.
In a bitter fight, her divided family can't agree on how to help her. The sticking point: who should have control over Etta's money and end-of-life decisions? On one side, her husband Artis, who wants to keep her at home no matter the cost. On the other, her 2 sons by different fathers, Donto and Sametto.
It seemed like one of those kind of things that couldn't be settled over a cup of coffee.
At the end of the day, it became a battle over her fortune.
For Etta James, family turmoil is nothing new. January 25, 1938, Etta is born James Etta Hawkins in Los Angeles, the child of a child. Her mother, Dorothy Hawkins, is only 14 years old and an alleged con artist, prostitute, and drug user.
Her mother was this, teenager who ripped off people and I think had her own run-ins with the law and, left Etta, to be raised by somebody else.
That somebody else is Etta's landlady, Mama Lou. Dorothy shows up sporadically and whisks her daughter away to run-down motels. Until the landlady and music come to Etta's rescue. Joel Selvin, former music critic for the San Francisco Chronicle.
Etta James had one of the worst childhoods we can imagine. Never knew her father. Her mother was unavailable. Her career was a lucky accident that saved her from a life that would have been as terrible as her mother's.
It's rumored that Minnesota Fats, the famous pool shark, is Etta's father.
And apparently she told that story to people all the time. And apparently a reporter went up and asked him and he wouldn't, deny it. He wouldn't say one way or the other.
When Etta is just a child, she sings at church, and the power of her young voice blows away the congregation. Despite her troubled family life, she already seems destined for greatness. Then in 1950, when Etta is just 12 years old, her beloved Mama Lou dies. A year later, her mother Dorothy is thrown in jail for being in a house of prostitution, leaving Etta to fend for herself.
Etta was pretty much running wild. I guess the term at the time would have been juvenile delinquent.
By age 14, Etta's gone from choir girl to street singer in the Creolettes. This is where she's discovered.
She ended up meeting bandleader Johnny Otis. She was singing on a street corner in San Francisco, and he heard her singing along with her friends, and she had this like unbelievable voice. And from there, he kind of took her under his wing.
Otis changes the group's name to the Peaches and reverses James Etta's name to Etta James.
He took her down to Los Angeles to make her first record. Dance With Me, Henry was a major hit in the rhythm and blues world.
As her musical star rises, so too does her drug use.
You know, she was a troubled girl. I mean, you know, she had a hard life.
By 1961, Etta's near the top of the R&B charts with the release of her signature song, At Last. It's the same year she uses heroin for the first time.
Etta was a heroin addict for most of her adult life and shot quite a bit of heroin, not just small amounts.
The 60s are a blur of touring and drugs. Some people can't work high, but Etta can and does.
It was almost amazing that she lasted as long as she did, given the fact that she had so many drug problems and so many issues with the law, and she had personal problems, many personal demons.
Etta sings to feed her habit, but it's not enough. By the mid-60s, she's writing bad checks to get cash for dope. She even does jail time for it. Etta's romantic life is equally turbulent. Donto James is Etta's oldest son.
My mother all her life tend to attract men that can protect her, you know, big men, you know, brawly most of the time, you know.
In her early 20s, Etta meets up with a man she calls the pimp. One night in a hotel room, he hits her over the head 9 times with a bottle. Soon after, she hooks up with Donto's father, Billy Foster, an ex-con. She gets pregnant.
My dad, I didn't have that much of a relationship at first with him. He was out and about and doing his thing. At the time, he was an alcoholic. So I didn't see much of him.
While pregnant, Etta stops shooting up, but she keeps snorting coke. And her drug use continues as Donto grows up.
Donto used to try to keep dope dealers away from her during her difficult times. He saw things that a son perhaps should not see his mother go through, but he stood by her.
January 1969, fresh out of jail, Etta meets a former pimp and war veteran, Artis Mills. They marry in May of that year. At first, Artis is against the hard stuff. But before long, the two are shooting smack together, going to extremes to support their habit.
She was in jail for some periods of time, and so it was really sketchy, a little bit back and forth from like the 60s to the 80s.
1972, while traveling through Texas, Etta and Artis are arrested for heroin possession. Against Etta's wishes, Artis claims the drugs are his.
But it was clearly Etta's heroin.
Artis takes the fall and goes to jail for almost a decade.
Etta's nickname for Artis was the Sergeant because he made sure things got done. Some of the less than glamorous things he took care of. And when it came time to stand up, he would be there, you know, and he backed her up completely or would take the brunt of things at times.
While Artis is in jail, Etta continues to use until the mid-70s when she's busted for failing to check in with her parole officer in Texas and writing bad checks again.
She had the choice either to go to jail, spend time in jail, or to go to a rehab facility. Of course, she decided to go to the rehab facility, which was Tarzana.
Tarzana is a facility that uses tough love techniques to help people clean up. For Etta, it's at times a humiliating experience.
When I saw her, she came out, and he said, your mother's coming, I haven't seen her in a long time. And she came out with a diaper. She had a clown nose, a clown wig, and a big piece of paper taped to her and said, "I'm a baby." And so that, you can imagine that was a shock to me, but I was so glad to see her.
But rehab helps Etta stay clean. And she even meets a man there, Sam Dennis. He fathers her second child, Sametto James.
Well, my dad, I was close with him up until the age of about 7 or 8 years old. And that's when I guess him and my mom had a falling out, and they split up from that point.
We ended up moving back into her house in Los Angeles, which she kept the whole time. And that was a really, really wonderful experience to move back into that house.
Then Artis gets out of jail in 1981 and shows up on her doorstep.
When I met Artis, he was in the room sitting at the edge of the bed, and he said, "Hey, you remember me?" And I said, I just kind of stood there. And I think he got a little angry about that, disappointed about it, but me and his relationship was pretty good.
But observers tell a different story, and family tensions erupt when Etta falls deathly ill.
There was definitely a difficult relationship between Artis and the sons.
In 1981, singer Etta James is out of rehab and back with her husband Artis. They live with her 2 sons by different fathers. The singer's career soars while she's sober.
She had actually moved off of the heroin later on, in her later years after she got out of Tarzana. So it was just rock and roll at that point that I saw.
Thanks in part to Etta's new manager, Lupe de Leon.
So much of Etta's professional success that she finally accomplished was the result of a really devoted and loyal manager, Lupe de Leon.
As well as Artis. It was the 2 of them that really, really catapulted her career and got her back on track. I mean, she ended up winning a Grammy Award, and she was inducted into the Music Hall of Fame, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and these guys like really, took her by the hand and did things that she never thought possible. I mean, her career just skyrocketed. It was amazing.
Etta's sons Sametto and Donto inherit her musical ability, and they tour as a family.
Oh, my mother was real, She was very sweet person. She would do anything for anybody, but she had a very feisty side to her and some mood swings, awful mood swings. She would give the shirt off of her back to a person, and but she'd also rip one off of you.
Donto and Etta had a very close relationship. They were able to speak, both of them, to each other quite frankly. He could ask her a question about life that was maybe in an area that normally you wouldn't speak to your mother.
The family is tight, but some say there's tension between Etta's sons and their stepfather.
There was definitely a difficult relationship between Artis and the sons.
There are some things that I would not be privy to with Artis and Donto. They had different roles, Artis would look out for many of the business aspects. Donto's job, when Artis wasn't on the road, was to look out after his mom too, which he did. Without assigning each other roles, it was just kind of an automatic thing. In the end, though, Etta was the boss.
Etta and Artis also have their ups and downs.
My mother's relationship with Artis, she loved him, but they had their differences at times. My mother's a hard person to get along with, and sometimes Artis can be. So they would have their things just like any other wife and husband.
By March 2008, Artis and Etta are at a low point. Artis goes to Texas for a family reunion, and Etta goes to stay with Donto.
And so she asked me if it was okay if she come to my house. And I said, sure. So we can hang out there until Artis gets back. And that seemed fine with me.
They were actually having marital problems, serious marital issues.
And technically, I don't want to speak on what exactly those problems were, but she decided that she wanted to file for a divorce from him for a few different reasons.
Behind Artis's back, she and her son go to see an attorney. Etta secretly files for divorce from Artis after 39 years of marriage, and she gives Donto power of attorney. That makes her son responsible for her healthcare decisions in the event that she becomes incapacitated. Etta also changes her will, leaving all her assets to her sons and nothing to Artis.
And in there, it basically said that Artis had no rights to anything. He was like completely written out of anything.
Records are sealed, and Etta's son Donto won't say why his mother made these changes.
She seemed pretty definite on what she wanted to do. However, I tried to talk her out of it. I said, hey, you've been together for a long time. You guys have been together for a very long time, but she wasn't trying to hear that.
What in Etta James's life wasn't volatile? Her whole relationship with the world was volatile, turbulent, and contentious. I mean, right from the very start, she was in that kind of a corner, trying to fight her way out.
But just a few months later, Artis and Etta reconcile. Etta moves back in with her husband, and she cancels the divorce proceedings. She doesn't tell Artis about the changes to her will or that she gave her son power of attorney. By late 2009, Etta's back in rehab. This time for an addiction to painkillers. She's also got pneumonia, hepatitis, a bad urinary tract infection, and a very serious bacterial infection known as MRSA. She can hardly talk above a whisper. She can't stand, and she won't eat.
Because she had different problems, back problems and things like that, she went to a detox center to try to come off the pain medication, okay? And at that time, while she was in there, she started getting sick.
Etta's mind is suffering, along with her body. She forgets where the bathroom is and gets confused in conversation. It becomes clear she's suffering from dementia. What is less clear is how long she's had it.
It's just a tragic and drastic situation. See people's abilities just drain out of them slowly but surely, and leaving this physical hulk behind that looks exactly like the person that she used to be.
Etta's treated in the hospital, but when she's released, doctors tell Donto that his mother needs 24-hour care.
The actual doctors didn't want to let her go home until there was a staff there to properly take care of her because she was still being treated with the antibiotics.
So Donto makes plans for his mother to be discharged to a nursing facility. But Artis wants Etta to come home.
Before she got ill, the two of them had talked that, if they ever got ill, they didn't want to go into a nursing home if they had the money. That she and him both wanted to live at home for as long as they possibly could live.
Once again, Artis comes to his wife's rescue. He arranges for a doctor to move in permanently so that Etta can receive full-time care at home. That doctor is Elaine James.
I actually physically moved all of my things in the house. And that's when I'm going to change Etta's name to Grandma, because I did not call her Etta. Because in the South, it's rude for a younger person to call an older person by their first name. Because if I said Mrs. James, that's my mom's name. And if I said Miss James, that's my name. So I'm like, this is too confusing. I'm just gonna call you Grandma.
Elaine's relationship with Etta goes back years, to 2001, a time when Etta's clean except for painkillers, but she has a new battle to fight, against obesity.
My mother, she weighed close to 400 pounds, and I was very concerned, the family was concerned, and I didn't know what to do or what to say.
Etta's so big she wheels herself on and off stage.
She had one of those little motor carts. On stage, microphone, sings the show, ends the show, backs up off stage. She's getting a big ovation, so out she comes, waves at everybody, and backs up.
My mother was always a powerhouse, didn't matter what weight she was.
She had such bad osteoarthritis that she couldn't walk, and her weight, well, contributed to the pain, of course.
So we found out that there was a doctor by the name of Phoebe that created his own, it's called the Phoebe pouch. And they call it, this the gastric bypass in today's time, the ring. And so she decided to get that surgery.
After surgery, Etta loses 200 pounds.
When she started losing the weight, yeah, a lot more energy she had and more stamina, and she looked great. And yeah, it was great.
Etta never liked to carry her cell phone and reliably answer them, so I would always call Mr. Mills to ask how Etta was doing. And she was losing weight, and he said, "Oh, Dr. James, her fans don't even recognize her." I said, "Oh, that's great." Oh, he said, and Etta's really shopping a lot. I said, "Oh, yeah, that's exactly what you do, go out and shop."
There was one time where I actually saw her fit. She went and bought this little small dress at the time because she was wearing big clothing. And it was a beautiful dress. And she was getting fitted for it in the room. And I looked in there and I saw her and she just looked so radiant in it. I mean, I just almost brought tears to my eyes, you know. I said, wow, my mother's back, you know. She's gonna be here for a while.
When Dr. James moves in with Etta in 2010, a new issue emerges. She's diagnosed with leukemia. And expenses for in-home care are running upwards of $30,000 a month. Artis petitions the court to get access to 3 of her bank accounts, totaling $1 million.
Artis Mills went to court because he wanted to get conservatorship over her money. And so he wanted access to it because at this point in time, she was bedridden and she really couldn't make too many decisions about what was going on in her life.
But Artis doesn't tell his stepsons Donto or Sametto, and this omission drives a deep wedge in an already troubled family.
Well, it looks like what Artis was possibly trying to do was take the money out of all my mother's accounts and put it into his name, as far as we know.
After years working hard and partying harder, Etta James is diagnosed with leukemia. She's unable to speak and is under 24-hour care. Struggling to pay the bills, her husband Artis petitions the court to access Etta's bank accounts worth $1 million. When Etta's sons Donto and Sametto James learn what Artis is doing, they doubt his motives are selfless.
Me and Donto received notice from the courts of Riverside County, I guess for Artis petitioning to, gain access to the bank accounts. We were concerned and we had to find out what was going on.
My mother wanted her own bank accounts because she always said, well, he has his and I have mine, we have ours together. But she always believed that in a marriage, each person should have their own separate bank accounts. For whatever reason, she was dead set on that.
Etta's sons are mad Artis didn't consult them first, and they don't trust their stepfather to spend the money wisely.
Well, it looks like what Artis was possibly trying to do was take the money out of all my mother's accounts and put it into his name, as far as we know. That didn't look right. It wasn't necessary.
Donto is also not convinced that 24-hour live-in care at $30,000 a month is the best way to spend his mother's money. Paul Wright is his attorney.
We did have some concerns about where the money was actually going. We expressed those concerns, and we tried to keep a tighter rein as possible on the expenditures of the monies coming out of Etta's accounts.
Dr. Elaine James defends the medical expenses, the bulk of which is her salary.
Mr. Mills hired me as a 24/7 physician. That meant I worked 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 31 days a month, no vacation, no break. So I worked at a very exorbitant $27.70 an hour. You can't get a mechanic to fix your car for that. I was working 168 hours a week. Do the math.
Artis insists live-in care is what Etta wants, no matter the cost. But Donto and Sametto don't agree. So in 2010, Donto contests his stepfather's petition and challenges Artis by petitioning for conservatorship, or legal control of Etta's accounts, himself.
Donto appeared to want her either in the hospital or in the nursing home.
We wanted Etta to be taken care of, but we didn't want the estate dissipated to the detriment of Donto and Sametto and the grandchildren.
But Donto says money is definitely not the driving force.
It didn't seem like there was, for the family, the rest of the family, there was any accounting or any system in place to find out when, where, and how the money was being spent. And that's why we felt that it should be a conservator. I wanted either some kind of accounting or some other third party to step in and just watch things and just account, for things. And it just didn't seem like that's not what the other side wanted.
I think the battle at the end of the day came down to money, who was going to have control over her money. I think that, Etta James is definitely the breadwinner in the family. She was sort of the golden goose, And so once Etta lost her, faculties and, then I think it became an issue of, okay, who's going to control the money, who's going to take the money, what's going to happen to the money.
Between me and Artis, I believe we just wanted the same goal, However, we had our differences in a couple of different areas, but.
I was actually glad that I wasn't privy to some of that stuff. Donto was my best man. Artis helped get me the gig, so it was kind of tough choosing between the two.
What Artis doesn't know is that Etta made a trip to her attorney back in 2008, and Donto says the fact that he has power of attorney trumps Artis's role as husband.
Artis was incredibly shocked. I mean, all along Artis said that he wanted the money to be used for Etta James.
Growing up with my stepfather, we never questioned, anything that he said or anything. We always listened to him, he was always the father figure in the house. So stepping up and saying, well, maybe we don't want this, that was really tough at the time.
Artis fights back. He claims that when the documents were drawn up in 2008, Etta was already in the throes of dementia. Battle lines are drawn, and two new people step into the ring. Pamela Valencia, a court-appointed attorney, and Dennis Sandoval, her supervisor.
Whenever there's a contested conservatorship, the court will appoint an attorney to represent that incapacitated person because that person is not able to speak for themselves.
I needed to figure out as best I could what those interests were. And I needed to not be swayed by any thought of supporting Artis or Donto, except in the matter of when I had decided what I thought my client wanted. And then I was a proponent for terms that I thought she wanted.
By 2010, Etta needs to be fed, bathed, and dressed, and she's becoming more and more confused. It's clear that Etta has full-blown dementia. What is not clear is how long she's been suffering from it.
In 2008, when Donto took Etta to see the estate planning attorney, it is probable that she was subject to his influence. She may or may not have had capacity. And so the documents that were executed, which was a will, a power of attorney, a trust, and healthcare documents, were questionable documents. We didn't know whether or not they were valid.
And if Etta was suffering from cognitive impairment in 2008, another question arises. Did Donto use undue influence to pressure his mother into giving him power of attorney and changing her estate plan?
In a simple sense, what undue influence is where you have a power imbalance in a relationship. One of the big problems with undue influence cases, especially in court, is people do have a right to change their minds, and it's hard to tell when it's being done naturally. The question is when does that relationship become insidious?
Donto and his attorney say the relationship was never insidious.
No, I did not assert any undue influence on my mother. People should know my mother. You can't make her do nothing. You can't make her do anything, okay? In 2002, she started her estate planning and with a power of attorney docs. She listed me as wanting me to be power of attorney over her health care at that time. So by 2008, all she did was to go back and to finalize those papers. That was her intent from the start.
These trust documents were drafted by a leading entertainment and highly respected firm in Los Angeles. So it was very difficult to see how there was any undue influence. It's an easy allegation to make, maybe not so easy to prove.
Undue influence may be hard to prove, but there is a lot of anecdotal support for the theory that Etta was suffering from dementia back in 2008. For starters, there's Etta's erratic behavior going back years.
The 10-ton gorilla really was Etta's medical condition in 2008.
It was kind of a sign of things to come. You know, she had started to, acting irrationally.
As singer Etta James lies on her deathbed in 2011, her husband and sons are embroiled in a struggle for control over her estate. At the heart of the debate, the question of when Etta James started suffering from dementia.
The 10-ton gorilla really was Etta's medical condition in 2008.
In 2008, Etta inexplicably bows out of a major tour partway through, then refuses to pay longtime manager Lupe de Leon.
At one point in time, he met her in New York, and he wanted to get paid for, some of the stuff, the work that he had done for her, and she had flat out refused to pay him. I mean, her manager said she started to act irrationally. She wasn't paying him, she always paid him. She left her husband. So there was things that were starting to occur with her that were, very strange, and it was totally out of character from her. And so he said that he, at that point in time, realized that there was more going on than what met the eye, and that she was suffering from something.
Then in 2009, Etta is plastered across the tabloids for attacking Beyoncé Knowles' cover of It Last at Barack Obama's inaugural ball. She even lashes out on TV.
Damn Beyoncé, she had no business up there singing up there on a big old President Day and gonna be singing my song that I've been singing forever.
Some say dementia is to blame for Etta's outbursts.
It was kind of a sign of things to come. She had started to, acting irrationally.
There was times when I noticed in everyone else that perhaps she wasn't as lucid. She would even jokingly say, maybe I'm getting Alzheimer's, and make a laugh about it and say, you know, I've been through a lot and maybe some of the stuff is kicking me back now. She may not have had all of her faculties all the time, but her at 75% was better than 99% of the rest, in my opinion.
But others, like Donto, say Etta was perfectly lucid.
Yeah, well, the inaugural ball, I was with my mother, just me and her, and so we watched it. Beyoncé started singing at last. I noticed she went from, she had her spoon up here, you know, she was eating, she went from this to... And I said, Mom, what's wrong? She just shook her head, you know. He said, nothing, you know, and that was a song that she's been singing for a long time.
Understand that Etta wasn't really upset at Beyoncé. She was hurt. She wanted to perform her song. She didn't think that she would make it for another presidency and be able to get the opportunity to do that. And in the end, Etta was right.
To me, it's just totally in keeping with the Etta James that I knew. I don't think she cared who she was speaking to. If she thought something was wrong, she would say so.
My mother was definitely knew everything that she was doing. You know, she went on 20 shows, okay? She performed 20 dates with performances within that time. First I'm hearing it was dementia. Well, how can you perform at that level, you know, under those circumstances? I mean, that's a serious level. She really kicked butt out there on stage, yeah.
Dennis Sandoval agrees that since dementia is a progressive disease, in the early stages, people can make their own decisions.
A diagnosis of dementia or Alzheimer's disease does not necessarily preclude an individual from executing a will or a trust or a contract or any other kind of legal document. Dementia and Alzheimer's diseases are progressive diseases, meaning that the longer you have them, it more affects your mental abilities. And so if a person is early on in dementia or in Alzheimer's, they may still have the legal capacity to execute a will or a trust. And if they're further along in the disease, they may no longer have that capacity to execute that document.
Attorney Paul Wright says Etta had many reasons to give her son power of attorney.
There is no doubt in my mind that Donto had the closest of all personal relationships with his mother, and I later learned that Sametto did also. I believe the trust documents that were signed in 2008 were a reflection of Etta's wishes. The artist had been taken care of during her married and professional career, and Etta was looking back at her life, a highly accomplished life, and she wanted to take care of Donto, Sametto, and the grandchildren. And that was a very critical part of the relationship. Etta very much trusted Donto and wanted him to take her end-of-life decisions. She knew no matter what the circumstances and what the personal cost, would do everything in his power to keep Etta alive. And I think Etta was comforted by that assurance and knowledge.
My mother was a fighter, and she wanted to keep fighting to the end, and that's the reason why she didn't want the plug pulled. One thing she said to me, she said, son, if I'm on life support, do not pull the plug on me. Don't. And so I suppose that she trusted her son to make that particular decision.
But not everyone agrees Donto has his mother's best interests at heart. Pamela Valencia is Etta's court-appointed attorney.
Other people that I spoke to were fairly convinced that Donto was more concerned over the money than he was over his mother's health.
In late 2010, she receives a letter from Etta's agent stating her behavior throughout 2008 was erratic. Then another, this time from a Dr. David Kipper, saying she was impaired as far back as 2005.
Artis turned around and said was that he provided proof that that was not true. He was basically saying that Etta was not of sound mind when she gave her son Donto power of attorney. And so he ended up getting letters from her doctors, dating back, many years.
These letters call into question Donto's power of attorney and shift the case in favor of Artis. Then Donto changes the focus with some astonishing accusations against Etta's live-in doctor.
Yeah, let's sling some mud. Gee, get some attorneys and let them sling some too, because I got compared to Conrad Murray's care of Michael Jackson. I'm like, oh God.
Etta James has full-blown dementia. The singer's husband, Artis, claims this means her son's power of attorney is not legally binding. But Donto's not ready to give up the fight. He claims his mother is not receiving proper care at her home with Dr. Elaine James, and he asks the court to move her to another facility.
Personally, if I had my druthers, and I'm sure my brother would feel the same way, if she could have went to a cancer institute, that would have been good.
By this time, Etta is suffering from far more than dementia. She has leukemia, kidney difficulties, and hepatitis. Dennis Sandoval is one of Etta's court-appointed attorneys.
One of the diseases that Etta was suffering from was leukemia. And Donto was making allegations that some of her treatments were unconventional because she wasn't doing everything as aggressively as possible to treat the disease.
Donto states he's gravely concerned about the care his mother is receiving in that house. And one of the other attorneys ends up saying, yes, that's just bad medicine. And I'm like, ooh.
There were some allegations of bizarre conduct at the house.
Donto and his attorneys referred to Dr. Elaine James as the Mrs. Conrad Murray. And, obviously they were trying to insinuate that she was just as bad as Dr. Conrad Murray, who basically killed Michael Jackson.
I think it was Mr. Deering said, Dr. James is giving Etta James the similar care to the care that Michael Jackson received from Dr. Conrad Murray, who's now sitting in jail awaiting manslaughter charges.
She was very upset because, obviously they were trying to paint her out to be this witch doctor.
Donto says Etta would be better off in a hospital setting.
When my mother would get sick, when she'd go to the hospital, she would get well. And I would see this happen so many times, and I knew that I felt that she should have went there a few times in the past. She should have been taken to the hospital a little bit sooner.
I think he believed that, the more time his mother spent in Riverside Community Hospital, the longer she would live.
No, it wasn't nothing personal with Dr. James. Me and Dr. James was all right. Yes, I just wanted my mother to get the best care possible. And that was it.
But Dr. James thinks it probably is personal. In fact, she used to treat Donto, but stopped.
I found out that he was receiving medications on the outside, so I was not happy about that, and I dismissed him as a patient.
Dr. James speculates Donto remained bitter.
There was a personal antagonism between Dr. James and Donto, and that caused a lot of tension.
So they said, we want a restraining order. We want a restraining order to stop her from treating Etta.
Judge Karaman orders an independent medical examination of Etta James.
So the judge said, wait a minute. Before we do all this, how about get the court-appointed attorney to get another physician, an independent physician who may know of her case, to go over to the house and examine the patient, and then ask Dr. James for her charts, and then get two other physicians to independently review her work.
Pamela, at the order of the court, had 2 independent doctors come in and evaluate the situation at the house.
The investigation concludes that Etta James is receiving excellent care at home.
I didn't get from the stories that were handed to us from the court investigator, I didn't get that Etta was in danger. I got that there were people who really thought that Dr. James was odd.
A peaceful settlement between her husband Artis and her son Donto seems unlikely. Etta's health is in rapid decline. Will there be a settlement before the inevitable? Pamela Valencia decides she has to do something to move the case forward, and fast.
She had put a letter with a proposed settlement in it and submitted it to the other attorneys.
Donto's attorney, Paul Wright.
I think Pamela had a leading role in fashioning the settlement agreement, and so I give due deference to that. But we do believe that Pamela made it quite clear that she had sort of more sympathy for Artis' position rather than Donto's and Sametto's, and that was a source of disagreement throughout the process.
On September 16, 2011, Judge Karaman proposes a shortcut to reaching a settlement.
Judge Karaman is a man of action. He likes to have things done quickly, and we had already shown ourselves to be pretty slow. Everything took a long time for one reason or another. So rather than send us back out and say, well, go craft a settlement, he pulled my letter out of the file and said, well, here are the terms right here. Let's discuss these and come up with a settlement right now. So he held the letter on his desk, and he went down line by line with it, and he had everybody put in their 2 cents worth about whether that was an okay thing or needed to be modified.
Artis is granted conservatorship over Etta's estate, and he can spend up to $350,000 from her accounts to pay for her care. He's also required to account for how the money is spent.
And so we decided for Artis to be conservator, if he would like to be conservator. And that would work out perfect, because actually that's what we were looking for from the beginning, is somebody to account for the money.
Decisions about life support will be shared equally by Donto and Artis.
Ultimately, that was resolved, I think, in a satisfactory manner, so that both Donto and Artis had basically joint input and decisions over Etta's end-of-life decisions.
He can't, she called pull the plug, and we can't do it without his, so we all have to agree upon it at the same time.
And Etta will stay at home unless independent doctors deem otherwise. As for the estate,
it was basically a 50-50 split, but with enforcement mechanisms.
Finally, the case is settled, when only a few months later, Etta's health takes a turn for the worse.
She was just having a hard time breathing, so they contacted, they called 911. And so 911, the paramedics showed up and basically took her to the hospital at that point.
And next thing you know, we could hear a bunch of alarms and sirens and blue lights and stuff going on in the hospital, and we just knew it wasn't right.
So it was just me and my brother there at the time. And I said, Ma, it's okay, you can let go, you can do this. I'm here with you. I love you. You've been a good mother. I said everything I needed to say.
After several attempts to revive her, Etta dies the morning of January 20th, 2012, with family by her side.
I was right there with her, so that was a good thing. And I'm so glad that I was there. I'm so glad that I was there.
I'm very happy that she is now comfortable and not fighting and suffering, and she fought a really good fight. Etta was just a tough little soldier, and kicking and biting the whole way,
Finally, at Etta's death, her family is able to resolve its differences.
I can understand where they would come to loggerheads. But it was very reassuring to me at the funeral to see Donto and Artis together, a show of unity.
Yeah, I don't think that permanent damage has been done to me and Artis' relationship. I don't think anything's permanent unless people want it to be permanent. I think we can move on from here and be okay.
Her friends and fans hope that she's at peace at last.
There was like lineups like all down the street of people like waiting in line to see her. It was a really respectful thing for a woman who gave so much of herself that, you know, she had all her fans come back to, you know, see her in the end.
Her songs affect so many people to this day. People have these memories associated with their songs, and it's a part of the fabric of their life. In the end, it's the songs that stand, and they certainly stand.